Gucci icon, which we have been really floored away. Is that a thing? Blown away by the amazing presentations here. This is actually my presentation poster, 7 ways to, you are literally hurting your members. And we are here hanging out with Jackie from Spintronix, and we want to talk about ways that color guard members are getting hurt that we don't even really know what is causing them, or we aren't seeing that. We are ignorant to what's actually going on. So I'm going to flip it over and talk a little bit of anatomy. I was talking to her about what her color guard does typically, what a typical weekend looks like with them, because she wants to know what can we do for color guard members and how can we keep them healthy. So how many of your color guard members are passing around KT tape or knee braces?
Probably about half of them.
Okay. And what surface are you rehearsing on?
We have a concrete floor. Yes, it's wonderful.
Feels great. So they're doing all their choreography on concrete.
Yep, rolling around on the floor, jumping into it, everything.
Okay.
It's awful.
And what is their shoe wear?
Barefoot, usually.
And how long are rehearsals?
Long, like 8 hours. Usually we go in 3-hour blocks at a time.
And you're moving, I mean, it's color guard. It's not like percussion where one block is music standstill.
Right, yeah.
So every block you do is physically demanding.
We're constantly moving.
Okay. And tell us a little bit more about Spintronix in general, just so we can have a better picture of your group.
So we're an independent organization, and we rehearse every weekend, and we start in September, and we go through our state circuit championships, which is at the end of March, beginning of April. And every single weekend, these kids are coming in on Friday, and they're rehearsing on concrete floor, cold concrete. We don't have much heat in our space, so cold concrete floor, and then they go to bed, get up the next morning, same thing over again. So just rehearsing all day on concrete.
Okay, so let's talk just about the rehearsals, the biomechanics of what their bodies are going through and what that turns into long term. So let's take an anatomy model. This is me being an artist outside.
He's a really good artist.
I'm trying to work with anatomy here. Don't count the vertebrae if you're a healthcare practitioner out there. I just drew some lines. But this is your pelvis right here. We're not going to worry about the orientation of which way it's facing, but know that it looks something like that. From here are your hip bones. So a lot of people kind of grab, the edges of their body right here and think that's their hip. That's actually your pelvic bones. So that's starting up here. Your hip bones are down here, right below where my pocket seam is hit. They're connected. You have your gluteal muscles, your butt muscles that come from the back side. Everybody knows where they are, thanks to Kim Kardashian. But those come around and attach onto the outsides of your hip joint here and help to rotate your hip and give it stability when you are moving. When we're talking about female anatomy, what is the percentage of males to females who are using, or the numbers of males to females using knee braces and
None of my males are. It's only my girls, like straight up.
Right. When you take a female adolescent versus a male adolescent, you look at their anatomy, pelvis here, hips coming in like this. They have what we call a Q angle, which is the angle from hips down to knees throughout their lower extremity. That Q angle, because females' hips are widening during puberty and stay that way, that causes different stresses on the lower extremity than it does for males, which are more of a straight line path down to the ground, which follows gravity a little bit differently. So when you change that Q angle here, that puts a little bit more of an inward angle in your lower extremity. Then you take away shoe wear. So we're talking about people who have, what's the average age in your ensemble?
15, 16.
Okay, so people who've been spending 15 or 16 years of their life wearing shoes. How many of them have or still are currently playing sports regularly?
Only like 2 or 3 of them.
Okay.
It's not a lot.
So out of that big number that you have in your ensemble, maybe 10% or less have properly developed the body control and the strength that they need. So you take away their shoe wear without developing their foot muscles properly. So they no longer have the support down here. So if you can see close enough, there's a tiny black arrow of just a moment here, a physics moment of rotation at the foot. That causes something up the chain, which internally rotates, meaning turning in of the knee itself, the patellofemoral joint and the tibiofemoral joint here, which changes the stress on your knee joint. Here, the black lines are your quadricep muscles coming down. The girls who are not, this is literal science, the females tend to be weaker than the males if you go do strength studies on young people. And when you're weaker here, that doesn't give you the ability for your knee to track as well, as efficiently as if you had more quad strength. So that's another one of the reasons that the males tend to be a little bit better off with knee pain issues here. But you've got that internal rotation moment at the knee that can't be controlled by the hip muscles as well. So when we look at knee pain specifically, it's what we can consistently agree on is the fact that hip weakness and quad weakness are dominant in what is going on. Those are the big players in the game. Then in color guard, we go and take them into an environment that's a hard surface, make them do really high level athletic things, leaping, jumping across the floors, 8 hours a day of movement. No other sport is doing 8 hours a day. Football goes out and practices for a couple of hours and then calls it, right? We're taking away their footwear on that hard surface, then we're not giving them the strength and stability up the chain to give their bodies what they need to prevent the injuries. And then you have KT tape being a Band-Aid and knee braces being a Band-Aid on these athletes.
So we have girls who are quitting before they're even close to their age of aging out.
Mm-hmm. And then the ones who don't quit end up getting obsessed with the activity because it's a beautiful activity and do it year-round and get into sports specialization, which is similar to what young baseball players do, where they try to play year-round. They try to go play travel ball, then they try to play their high school league or their middle school league, and then they end up getting hurt, several times more likely than those who took a break and took a season off, took a summer off, or took a winter off. Your typical weekend schedule is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday night rehearsals call 6 to 10, 4 hours there. Saturday rehearsal, let's say 9 to 5, and then a contest, which could take hours. And then Sunday is a morning session, pretty much. How much of that is being dedicated to a stretch, or kids just go and work on flexibility?
Probably about 15 minutes. We're doing stretches and warm-ups with our dance class as part of our dance class.
And I would say that's on the lower end of just statically going and working on flexibility for color guards that have been around. They'll go out there and just really spend a ton of time stretching and then trying to improve flexibility. When you take these athletes that we already talked about that have a little bit of weakness already going on typically and don't develop the strength that they need. So you're stretching in a static position, meaning they're mostly laying down or sitting and trying to work on that flexibility rather than working on the strength issues that they need to prevent the injuries in the first place. So I basically call it a spectrum between mobility and stability. Stability meaning, this goes back to the difference between males and females going through puberty. Males tend to get a little stiffer, a little bit tighter. They're on the stability end of things. So when you go to ask them to do some rolling at the beginning of their color guard career, they look very stiff. They're the ones that tend to need more of the mobility end. But the average color guard member is way over here on the mobility side. If you've danced for a long time, you're way on the mobility side of things.
That's our training program is ballet based. All of our dance training is all ballet because that's what I did. So that's what I know. That's my background. And
you probably, maybe personally or know people in your classes going through your background that have hips that pop and snap all the time.
It is a concert when I get out of bed in the morning. percussion concert every time I wake up.
Right. So some of that is literal micro changes in the hip joint that we have to swing that back in the opposite direction of stability within the hip and strengthening around the hip joint to just give it more, I guess you could say, suction, more pressure within that joint, and really build up the endurance in those muscles. So what we got to change as far as your routine goes is making sure you still stay mobile and the kids who need mobility still have it, but bring that balance back over into the stability ballpark so that you're not having kids sit out so much, because the biggest waster of your time is having the ones who have to miss rehearsal times.
Absolutely.
And you have to go reteach choreography. What are your struggles as an instructor on that end of things?
lately it's been better. It was a struggle for a long time though, because we had a lot of people who'd say, oh, I need to sit out, my knees hurt. In fact, one of our vlogs we did, if you were to go back and watch our vlog from 2016, we have one member we kind of followed through the whole season who had knee surgery because of her knee problems. I think there was prior
Other
things going on before she came to us, but she had knee surgery at the beginning of the season and had to go through all this stuff, and we had to pull her out of the show. We had to teach her different choreography for different parts, and just to have her have an experience with it. But she just got to the point, I don't even think she can do any sort of dancing or anything now. Her knees have been just such a mess. So.
Wow. So that's something that we have to do to protect our members. Number one, let them know that it's okay to take a winter off, or it's okay to take a marching band or summer season off to save your body, because if you just keep going, you keep getting burnt out, and your body keeps getting stress hormones released and breaking down when it needs to be building up in the off season. But on our end of things, organizationally, figure out how we can utilize, knowing that you only rehearse Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then trust that the members are doing stuff.
That's another thing, is just having that, like if there was some way we could guarantee that those performers are going home and they're doing these workouts, because we give them workouts to do, we give them stretches to do, we give them strength training exercises. We had a whole system where at one year where they had to actually go and like film themselves working out, and I think I got maybe 1 or 2 videos back from kids every week, and that was it. And it's like, if they're not out there doing these things, we're not going to be able to do great things in rehearsal, because they're not taking that personal responsibility and doing it.
Right, and strength gains are able to happen with 2 to 3 workouts a week. So we could work that in here in your 3 days of the weekend to make sure at least 2 of those days are getting what they need with that, without taking a huge chunk out of the time. So you're already using 15 minutes. Let's see what we can do within those 15 minutes to maximize it. If you've ever done a beach body or a P90X, you know, after 15 minutes, you're feeling it. You can make some changes there if you're doing things intelligently, but you have to progress throughout the season. So you're talking September through March. You've got 6 months to work with, if I did that math correctly. So how do you progress that? Planning wise, you got to plan for March. So September doesn't have to be high intensity boot camp training. September has to be more of education on movement techniques, not just dance techniques, but movement techniques for strength training and for working out and exercising. So you got to break it into phases. Say, I want to do a 2-month, just for math's sake. Let's do 3 phases. And this is unique to every program.
Yeah, not a lot of programs get to do the same sort of schedule we do. You know, we don't have to usually compete for gym space or anything like that because of our facility, but it's...
Oh, you don't have to compete for gym space?
We have our own facility, so...
That's nice.
Yeah, it has pros and cons.
Yeah, concrete floor.
Concrete floor, it's very cold, yes.
But that is helpful to have something consistent.
Yeah, yep.
So say phase 1, you need to develop just a baseline of muscle endurance. So meaning, really, it might just need to be more of coordination and skill first. So let's say, let's call that motor coordination. Teaching them how to do movements well without hurting themselves. Phase 2, let's say we need to build up their endurance.
So that would be where we start doing our high intensity, our HIIT workouts and things.
Yeah, so it would start to progress at that point. And then phase 3 would be more performance. And this is literally just me going live off the cuff. So,
just make it up as we go.
So how we could break that down for you guys. Let's talk about the member abilities. You got to think creatively too. So design becomes a big role in this. Do you already know your show for next year?
Yes.
Okay. Think about the physical things that your end goal is going to ask them to do.
Oh, it's a lot.
So
we're going to have to get the mats out.
Like the wrestling cushioned mats?
Yeah, those big wrestling ones that you roll out.
Okay. Give me one move that's going to be challenging physically?
Well, I'm thinking of this last year's choreography because we spent a lot of time on the floor. We spent more time on the floor last year than we ever have before. We had a move where they would like put one hand on the floor and then dive their knee into the floor and kind of like do a slide on one leg, and then like roll over that, like roll over onto their hip. So floor work, I feel like takes a lot of muscle to get down and up, and so I think that's going to be a big challenge for us.
Definitely. So I'm just putting that in the back of my brain as far as the performance end of things and knowing what you have to accomplish at that point. So just call it floor transitions. Let's take that one skill and let's break it down. So what do you need motor coordination wise? What do you need as far as just them learning how to do movements like that?
What do you mean? Like what kind of moves do we need to work on?
Can you show me what that looks like?
Can I show you
yes,
something?
Can you show me?
I can show you something. All right.
Whatever you need to do.
So just, they go through a lot of their ballet and dance things, and I don't know, I was not prepared for this. It's okay.
So something where they get
something like a technique-wise, something that. So let's just talk about maybe their first step off as they're going into a move, going into a jump or anything else. So you're going to step off with your tendu first. And as you're going through and getting ready to do some sort of skill, you're probably going to go into a plie so that you can get into the air.
Okay.
So they're going to have to be working on their alignment and having to understand that they can't just simply put their foot out there and take a step. They have to have a full-on, their posture. They have to have their all of their hips in alignment over their knees and so on, and then they have to be turning out their leg as they push through to take their first step. So.
Okay. Now take me through that specific floor transition that you have in mind. Just demonstrate that so I can break that down.
Okay, so
we didn't even warm up.
I didn't get to stretch or nothing. Okay, so they're coming forward, and they'll step, and then they're gonna take their left hand, and they're gonna put their left hand on the ground here, okay? And then they're gonna pull their left knee through and sling the rest of their body upward and reach for the sky. And so as they're doing that, first of all, you've got your knee coming into the ground, and then you've got your weight on between this arm and this leg, and you have to have the flexibility to be able to hit this position as you're coming up.
Right. So whole exercise regimen wise, you have to have, you said flexibility. So
which usually isn't too much of a problem.
Right, because we already have the culture for that.
Exactly.
And almost every color guard warm up that I've seen has music to it, and they are doing some stretch similar to what you were just in. And if not, some form of pigeon pose from yoga typically develops that's going on there.
Absolutely.
So flexibility wise, let's just take pigeon pose and know that that's going to work one side of it. Then expand on that. So take pigeon pose. Then they've got to work on their hip flexors. So the muscles on the front side need some mobility back because you had that right leg behind you with that. So make sure you add a hip flexor stretch to that. But so that we aren't swinging the pendulum too far here and making our warm-ups end up looking like all mobility and then end up having the end goal of not changing what's actually going on here and not making a difference. We got to talk about what they need strength-wise to make all that happen. And this is the hard stuff because everybody's fine doing flexibility training. And
that's because what we learned.
Right.
That's what we learned is the flexibility training.
And then it's a little bit easier too. It's not, if you could ask someone if they'd rather do a pigeon pose or rather hold a plank, they would take the pigeon pose every day of the week. So the very first part of what you did though was getting down on the ground with one arm out into a plank position that was not easy. That was harder than just doing a regular plank. Because a regular plank, you have all four limbs in contact with the ground. Which is going to make these phases super appropriate. So know that the plank you just did had, one arm up? One arm behind?
One arm up, one arm down.
Okay.
One arm bearing weight, one arm up in the air, and then one leg down, one foot down, and then the other foot in the air, the knee in the air.
Okay. were both feet in contact with the ground, or one?
Just one. Woo, yeah.
You're making my work hard over here.
I mean, the other foot comes in contact as it comes through.
As it comes through, right.
Yes, yes.
But the first thing I want to do is develop the static posture.
So you want, okay, hold on. So you want to do like this. My first pose here is like it's like a lunge. So my leg is here, and then that's when I go into this. This pose is the problem right here, as I'm coming through.
All right, which opens up just a whole can of exercises that they need to hit in the process there. So let's just talk about the core strength.
Okay.
Let's just talk about the fact that you got to have some objective things that these kids need to be able to do that stuff safely. Objective meaning, I can watch you do this, count it for this many seconds, and make sure that you can hold that. If you're going to be able to, now that move happened in a flash.
Yes.
But you're doing it for 4, 4, 8. Math. Gosh, math is hard. 16.
16 hours.
16 hours. It has been a long day at WGI. Okay, this fun fact. 16 hours is the threshold for sports injury exponentially increasing. If you do more than 16 hours of exercise a week, your injury risk just absolutely skyrockets. So we have to also look back at our schedules and realize how much rest are we actually giving these kids in the meantime, which is a whole other conversation that we can go back to this whole presentation for. But let's get back to the strength things. Let's talk about the plank. Teaching them the motor coordination of just a regular plank so that they start to develop hip, quad, core strength. So when you go into a plank, do you have any need to do like 10 seconds of the plank?
Elbows or hands?
Let's go hands since you were on your hands for that move. So when you go into this, you're doing it great. This is the picture of perfection. However, what do most kids do? Sag through here,
this one's
and
my
the hips
favorite.
go down.
This one's my favorite, that one.
Button there. Or they get into this good posture, but then they don't use their abs, and they tilt their pelvis forward, and it's like a ski slope right here. So you got to tuck the pelvis in and pull in your belly button. Pull in your belly button. Make sure you're pushing through your shoulder blades so you actually develop your arm muscles. Sag in your shoulders. I don't even know if you can do it. You've done it well for so many years. Yeah. So if you just sag through here, then you're not actually turning these muscles on. You're relying on your joint push through. Feels much better, right?
Yes.
All right, come up. You can relax there. So those are the motor coordination skills that they just need to learn how their body works in that environment first. Break down each little individual move, develop where they should feel it, then build up strength within those positions so that when you combine all that stuff by phase 3, it makes sense. Okay. So that's the regular plank. Then you get into a side plank, meaning on one arm with one foot in the air, which starts to get into more of the actual pulling through part. And that position that you talked about is so hard, putting your arm down, bearing weight through it, and having one leg come through. That's all outer musculature that you have to get the stability for. So plank's going to be on your list of things. Side plank is going to be on your list of things. That's all going to be kind of phase 1, develop the skill first. Phase 2, develop the endurance, and then start to add variations to it. So I could take a side plank, and I'll just demonstrate here. I could take a side plank of this, or a side plank with the arm out like that, and get that first, not sinking the hip in, not dropping here, not sagging in the shoulder, but pushing through. Once you get that, then you can start to add wherever the leg was, wherever the arm was, wherever you were. I think it was something like that. You can't get to here unless you can first just hold it with everything extended and in your favor.
Yeah, and that's going to really have a different effect on their posture too, as far as like if they're pulling through and having their posture forward and not being able to hold their core, their chest and their core. And if they can develop all that strength, I feel like they're going to be able to perform better just because they're going to be able to hold their head up. They're going to be able to pull up and see the audience.
Everybody gets into a plank and just sinks their neck into it, and it's nothing that translates onto the field, so or onto the floor. So if you could teach those skills within that first 15 minutes every day that you're going through, and it doesn't have to be the same exercises every day. In fact, let's get into, you said a lunge. So you could do like a core day one of these days. Then you could do a lower body day, so you work on that lunge positioning. That way you give the core a little bit of a break in between, and then do something a little bit differently on the third day. You could still, in this first phase, talking September, October, get enough actual time in potentially to get to when December, January rolls around, they're actually being able to hold those positions for 30 seconds or 60 seconds. That helps you hit the objective measure of saying, I want you to be able to hold a 30-second plank if you're going to do what I want you to ask, or if you're going to do what I'm asking of you in the show this year.
In the show, the choreography, yeah.
Then that gives you 2 to 3 months at the end to say, once they hit that objective marker of a 30-second side plank, now we can start doing the performance aspects and make that a warm-up, with it being safe. And with them, that took out, how many comments do you think you're going to make on that one move?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, no, I'm sure that that's going to fix a lot of the little issues we've been seeing. Like, oh, hold your head up, hold your shoulder up, pull your posture, all those different things. Like, a lot of the things that we got. There was a couple years ago we did a whole flag phrase on the floor where they had to get down into the floor, doing their flag choreography, and then get back up. And we got a lot of comments where there was just, oh, the guard looks tired. They look like they're so tired. They look like they're not strong enough for this. They look like they're not built for this. And I think that what you're talking about here is gonna fix that. Basically, we're gonna be able to not have those judges' comments. Like, that'd be nice to go in and not have to talk about that. Specific, like, how's our show going? And they're like, your performers look tired. Like, I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about how the show is. Like,
everyone in the audience could see that.
Yeah.
You know, I want to talk big picture stuff here.
Exactly.
So how do we clean up the little details around the edges? So what was that choreography with the flag on the floor? Is that them lying on their back?
Both. So they started out going down onto one knee, lying on their back, spun their flag with their feet, caught their flag with their hands, flipped themselves over onto their stomach, spun their flag on their stomach, and then came back around and sat up, like out of this position. It was hard, and we rehearsed the heck out of it. But we were lacking that core strength. We did start doing those, like I was talking about before, those video assignments. Like, okay, you need to do these exercises, and you need to do this at home. Send in a video, and like I said, we had like 2 people doing it. So
can we get into that position? Like, let's just
Which
do
one?
it on your back.
Okay.
Yep.
So they're here, and their flag is in their legs.
Perfect. From this position, I don't want to be able to stick my hand under your back.
Okay.
That made it harder, right?
Actually, it's a little easier.
It's a little easier. Oh, even better. Okay. Good for you. So you don't want arching of the back there.
Okay, so this is back.
Yeah. You want to tilt the pelvis in so they can control it.
Got it.
And that is not something that you're going to see. That isn't enough of a difference from the audience perspective to be like, oh, that's a weird technique thing. That's actually you having good body control here. So then if you're doing anything here, first we got to develop this position, but just kind of go through that move.
So you're just literally just here, you put your flag, and you flip your legs. And that's all you're doing in this position. So then we go from here, catch, and you're on your stomach. And you're kicking furniture.
Come on.
So you're on your stomach this way. I'm trying to remember how they got up out of this.
Don't worry about it.
They kept going the other way and they sat up, basically.
Okay. Let's break down one of those.
Okay.
Let's break down the first one with a dead bug.
Okay.
So literally lying on your stomach and just starting to hold that posture with knees bent. First, just teach them how to hold that for, say 15, 30 seconds without letting their back arch. Because I guarantee you get those young people who are growing into their body who don't have good movement skills yet. They won't be able to hold that. We can as adults because we've grown into our bodies and we've started to develop that.
We understand.
Yeah, and you've done dance for years.
Right.
So these are kids who are just learning dance, learning how to move. if you can teach them how to do that and hold it in phase 1, now phase 2 looks like, okay, we're still using this first 15 minutes of rehearsal. Instead of doing anything like this, or instead of doing any partner stretches, or instead of just reaching for your toes on the ground, instead of doing that, you're adding in what the next level of dead bugs is, which would be like a bicycle kick for you to get that rotation with the flag. And you can have your hands up to whatever position you need to be in. And then phase 3 is just actually doing the move.
Okay.
So you can literally have your flag in during their strengthening session.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, your choreography becomes their workout. So those are just some ideas. This went a little bit longer than I expected to go to.
Just a little. That's okay though.
What else do you want to talk about? Is that good?
That's good. That's good. I mean, I feel like you've answered my questions as far as all this goes. Like that was, I mean, it was a lot of answering. But,
great.
And I feel like I've had a little bit of a workout. I'm also very tired from today, so.
Thank y'all for tuning in if you're watching live.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Send us some messages. Follow Spintronix. Follow LA Stars. Hanging out with us in the building. Taylor's the man. Follow Brandon Arbo.